Today's podcast is presented by Podgo. Podgo is the easiest way for you to monetize your podcast, providing podcasters with a flat rate for ad space so you always know how much you get when you include an ad from Podgo. Apply today to become a member and immediately be connected with advertisers that fit your audience. That's podgo.co at podgo.co. And be sure to add our podcast, The Next Best Bet, in the How Did You Hear About Podgo section of the application. Now, on to episode 76 of The Next Best Bet. We finally had some football to talk about. Not just college football, but some NFL football. We also had some NBA, NHL, MLB. Plenty of bets that we gave out this past episode, Brett.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun having football back this weekend, Higgins. Little peek behind the curtain. We're recording with some football on, which is always fun. Some live action on while we're recording just makes it that much better.
Yes, we have the Sunday Night Football going on as we are recording this. And Brett, this episode was a little easier to pick our games compared to the plethora of games we had to choose in episode 75. I gave out 7 picks in episode 75. We're going into hindsight with Higgins now. I went 4-3, and I did pretty good. I mean, my Kansas City Chiefs -9, that was a good hit to start off the football season. Clemson -33.5. Exactly what happened, what I was worried about was Clemson would take their foot off the gas a little too early, and Wake Forest ended up coming back, getting some of those garbage time scores, and they didn't end up covering like they should have.
Yeah, that's going to happen time to time when you have a 33 and a half point spread. There was no question who the better team was. It just Vegas made the number too big.
Yeah, it was close though. I mean, they won by like 30, 31 points, so it was pretty close. But you're over on that West Virginia game. That was a great call because that shot through the moon.
Yeah, well, I I knew West Virginia could put up 55 by themselves, and Eastern Kentucky scored a few themselves, so that was a nice hit. Iowa State, ranked Iowa State, did not show up as Louisiana Lafayette came into their house and walked out with a W. So that
Purdy
one
did not
hurt.
look Purdy.
No, he honestly, that whole team looked pretty bad. Um, but Higgins, it's not a next best bet episode if I'm not betting on a voided baseball game.
This has been a theme since we have gotten sports back since the COVID pandemic. Baseball, they like to void it out on you, and that Baltimore Orioles +1.5 didn't want to cash either way.
No, that game was postponed against the Yankees to the next day. They chop off 2 innings, so that bet was voided.
Well, and let's jump into Beginner's Boulevard there because that's a good window into it. That had good value. It was a +107 pick, so that was a good value pick that you were going with, which is what you were talking about last episode. And last episode, our Beginner's Boulevard was exposure, and exposure can lead to value, which is why we're talking about it here. When a sportsbook has heavy money on a certain side of any bet, so let's say tonight in the Dallas Cowboys versus the Rams game, if a lot of the money was on the Cowboys, that creates value on the Rams side potentially because the sports book's going to even out those odds to try to get enticed bettors to help them even out their books on the other side. It's not basically going to be off of stats or anything football sabermetric wise that they're going to be moving on. It's going to be money based. So that's where you can find value. And we're going to have another example in the NHL as well.
Yeah, you mentioned the Cowboys. I think that's a great example. There was pretty significant line movement between the opening and closing line, a full
Two
point and a
full
half,
points.
2 full points. Yeah, I was saying a point and a half. You saw 2 full points. So, there you go. Lots of Cowboy fans across America, hence America's team, and lots of Cowboy backers.
And the example in the NHL that I'm talking about with where I find value is in this Dallas Vegas game that is obviously going on Monday. Dallas has a 3-1 lead in this series, and they're +145 on the money line. That doesn't make sense.
I guess hungry dogs run faster, Higgins.
Now, this has been a back and forth series. The Stars won the first game, Vegas won the second, Stars won the third and fourth. Will Vegas win game five? I don't think so. I think Dallas is going to try to get this rest day. Dallas has already surprised people so far by getting this far and having the lead in the Western Conference Finals. Why not just shut the door? I understand that Vegas is considered the home team in this, but the game's in Edmonton. There's no home ice advantage right now, so I don't really care who's home and who's away. Dallas has proved in the past four games that they're the better team, and at plus 145, that is some tremendous value on the money line, so that's where I'm going.
It is important to note, Higgins, though, that there is still some advantage to being the quote unquote home team. Your line changes second, and you get two periods in front of your bench. With the
Yes.
so there are small advantages.
But Brett, if you get two periods in front of your bench,
Well, they
the
do
other team
too.
gets two
Yeah,
in front of their bench, and without the fans, it doesn't matter.
yeah. Well, the line changes is a big thing. I mean, it's not a big thing, but it helps. It's X's
Yes.
and O's, and uh, it's not like basketball where there's literally no advantage. So I just think it's important to note that difference for
Yes, that's a
people
good point.
that don't follow hockey as closely as you and I. And I I respect the Dallas pick. I think they're up 3-1, and when you're getting plus 145, anything can happen in a single hockey game. So why not? Why not say they close it out?
I also like the value in the under five at plus 104 because the most goals scored have been five in any of the four games so far, and that was in game three when I also took the under 5.5 in that match, and that one hit. So some things to look at. I mean, most of these games have had some hot goalies, so something to look at there. But I think Dallas is going to try to close this out, just like Tampa is going to try to close it out on Tuesday, because Tampa also has a 3-1 lead, and they're facing off against the Islanders on Tuesday. So if either team wins, it could be a benefit if the other one loses and they get some extra rest days, but I think both teams might close it out.
Yeah, I'm rooting for Tampa Bay for sure. I do not need to see the Islanders playing for the Stanley Cup championship, so go Lightning.
Don't want to be hearing about that in New York, I am sure.
Yeah, no, I'm good with Tampa Bay going and representing the East. That's fine with me.
Let's jump into the NBA now because we have the Miami Heat versus the Celtics and the Nuggets versus the Clippers tipping off on Tuesday. Now, this is game one of the Eastern Conference Finals between Miami and Boston, but it's game seven in the Western Conference Finals after a tremendous 19-point comeback by Denver.
Yeah, that was a huge comeback by Denver, and you mentioned it is a candidate for Moneyline Magic. It was certainly deserving of that spot, but unfortunately, like Alec Mills and his no hitter, it came on an NFL Sunday, Higgins.
Yes, it became secondary news, unfortunately, because there was a money line magic that came out of the NFL, and we're going to get to that in a bit. But let's go over these games real quick. Starting off, I'm taking a pick in the Eastern Conference Finals matchup, Miami versus Boston. Miami's already proven everybody wrong throughout the entire bubble, throughout the playoffs so far, by going through Milwaukee like they did in dramatic fashion, and they're still plus 105 on the money line. And in this matchup, I'm going with the team that has the superstar. Jimmy Butler's a superstar. Kemba Walker's not the superstar. Jason Tatum is not yet a superstar. He may be in the future. At this point, he is not. Miami has the troops behind Jimmy Butler. Tyler Hero has played fantastic. The entire Miami Heat squad seems to be in sync with each other. At plus 105, I think they are going to come out firing.
Yeah, I like the value plus 105 for Miami. Um, to be honest, I think these teams are splitting hairs. So the team that's always plus money, I probably think there's some value there because I could see this one going 7 games as well, just like Toronto and Boston went 7 games. Miami's tough physical. Boston's got tough physical players too. Marcus Smart, notably. And I'm going to slightly disagree with you, Higgins. I think Tatum, borderline superstar for sure.
Borderline, he's not there yet though. If
Oh,
he if he
same
beats
level as
Miami and
Jimmy
he
in my
gets to the
book.
if he beats Butler and they get to the finals, I'd say he is the superstar. I'd say
I
he gets there.
I think they're the same level in my book. And I'm a big Butler fan. He plays the game the right way. He's two-way player. He hits big time shots. He's tough. He's physical on defense. He definitely takes pride in that side of the ball as well. But Jason Tatum is a special scorer, and those guys always find a way to get paid.
Yes, but let's also talk about the other thing you mentioned there before the superstar part. You could see this go into a game 7, and for our listeners, if you remember, Brett predicted that correctly with the Boston Toronto series. So let's mark this down on our calendar, folks, because we might be talking about this in a few episodes about Brett being right again. Because I tend to agree with you here. The line's at 2. There isn't much margin on either side. I could see this being a 7-game series, absolutely.
Yeah, I expect all these games to go down to the wire. Dragic versus Kemba's a great matchup. We already spoke about Butler and Tatum. Jalen Brown is obviously a great player for the Celtics. Duncan Robinson, a great shooter for Miami. So both teams have interesting chess pieces, and it'll be fun to see how Brad Stevens and Spoelstra use them.
Now, the Nuggets come back against the Clippers. That game's also happening on Tuesday, game 7. And the Nuggets are still 7.5 point underdogs in a game 7 where they just had a 19-point comeback and ended up winning by 13 points. This spread doesn't make sense to me. I mean, there's been lopsided wins either side for this matchup, but I see a game 7 being a brawl.
Well, the Nuggets are 5-0 in elimination games this postseason, Higgins.
Ooh, that's a good stat. That is a good stat. I like that.
5-0 in elimination games, plus 245 tomorrow night. I can't give it out on a podcast because it'll hurt my record, but I may be sprinkling a little something on that because that is a good trend. And these guys came back from 3-1 last series. So we've seen them do it not only this year, this post quarantine break, this postseason.
Now, this over under at 207. Let's remember the last game 7 that the Nuggets played in. The over under was around 200 as well. And that was a 78 to 80 game. Brett, do you expect this to be a defensive battle again, or do you think it's going to be let shooters shoot and just climbing up the scoreboard?
Uh, I think Jamal Murray's definitely going to need to show up. He's going to need to play a lot better, but I don't know how high scoring it's going to be or low scoring. I mean, it's going to be up to how tired these guys are, what their stamina is like. Honestly, foul trouble is going to play into it. You know, if the bigs are in foul trouble, are they going to be playing small ball? Do you go to backup bigs? So there's a lot of different factors, but over under 207, I would lean over that and say I could see this game being in the 110s, low 100s each. So I,
That's the trend of how this series has gone. That Utah versus Denver game 7 just really scares me because a 78 to 80 game 7, it could happen again. The claw could show up. The shooters could miss. This could become a defensive battle out of nowhere when this has been an average game that has seen at least one of the players or one of the teams get over 100 points. So I'm staying away from that over under entirely. I'm staying away from this game entirely, but it definitely intrigues me on Tuesday night.
yeah, I just think being plus 245 in a game 7, that's disrespectful. Like they've won
It
3 of
is.
the 4.
That
That
is
number just
disrespectful. That
seems
is
too
good.
big, and Jamal Murray has not played great. So if he plays a little better, Denver could definitely upset.
Now, let's jump into our money line magic because we hinted that the Nuggets could have been there because of their 19-point comeback in game 6. But Joe Burrow almost had a very, very impressive comeback drive with no timeouts and about 2 minutes left on the clock against the Chargers. Chargers were leading 16 to 13. Bengals had used all their timeouts, like I said, and Burrow's just throwing dart after dart, getting 7 yards, 10 yards, moving the chains, hitting those tight windows. And they get down there, and they get to the field goal, and not only is it wide right, but it looks like he may have pulled his calf or his hamstring or something. The kicker's injured and ended the game on an unfortunate circumstance from the Bengals, but you have to be impressed with what you saw out of your number one pick.
Yeah, it's definitely money line magic for the Chargers, and I guess it doesn't matter who's playing quarterback for the Chargers. It's just always going to come down to that last drive, no matter what. Um, And you mentioned it. Joe Burrow looked fantastic on that last drive. His clock management was fantastic. They spiked it on the right time. He threw a touchdown pass. AJ Green just shoved the cornerback.
I'd argue his left toe was still out of bounds there, but it was close. It was
Even
very
on the
close.
replay, I don't know. It was very close. I'd have to look at the replay again. I thought he was in both feet, but uh, yeah, that play was incredible. And then obviously you think, okay, they're gonna go to overtime, and you mentioned that the kicker comes up limp. That is about the worst ending you can have. Not only you miss the field goal, your kicker gets injured. The touchdown gets called back. That's some real money line magic for the Chargers.
Not to mention the Bengals were leading this game throughout until the fourth quarter. They scored the first touchdown. Chargers kicked 2 field goals in the second quarter, and then the Cincinnati Bengals did the same in the third quarter, and they took the lead and extended it. But then 10 points by the Chargers. Tyrod Taylor and that offense just woke up. A few costly mistakes by Burrow and that Bengals offense with some turnovers definitely played into that Chargers comeback in the fourth quarter. But overall, I would be impressed with how Burrow played so far.
Yeah, I agree totally. He looked very good today.
Now, let's jump into our football now. We would have been talking about some college football, but Virginia versus Vatech, that got postponed.
Yeah, that was actually supposed to kick off this weekend. It was going to be a big battle for these teams, and that's going to be postponed for COVID reasons as well. So, just something for the gamblers to note: always make sure your game is kicking off. Not our first COVID postponement in college football. So,
You want to make sure it's kicking off, or else it's going to be voided like Brett's Baltimore Orioles game, and you don't want that because it's basically equal to a push. You get your money back, but you could have bet on something else instead, a game that actually happened and potentially have won. So, I mean, you take the good with the bad, but we got Monday Night Football at least, and both of those games are happening from what it seems.
yeah, we got the Steelers visiting your Giants, Higgins. And then we got Titans kind of near your old home, Denver, Colorado. I guess that's Nebraska's team.
Well, I lived in northeast Nebraska, so there were a little bit of Chiefs, a little bit of Vikings, a little bit of Broncos fans. It was a little bit of everything.
A
More
little bit of
importantly,
everything.
if your team had a Nebraska Husker on the team, you were a fan of that team. So that's how that kind of went. But I am gonna be on one of the Monday night games. I think the Steelers are gonna win on Monday. I don't know if they're gonna win by 6. And as a Giants fan, I can't balance my thoughts with this and clear-headedly make a pick on it. So I'm staying away from that game in general. I'm not going to even be on the Giants at all. I don't think. I am going to be on the Titans versus Broncos game though, and I think the Titans -3 is a good line. I think the over/under says a lot about this game. It's going to be a ground and pound game. Melvin Gordon versus Derrick Henry and the Ryan Tannehill combo of just give Derrick Henry the ball and get out the way, basically. And until Derrick Henry can prove to be stopped, I'm going to bet with him right now. -3 at -111 seems like some good value, and if it pushes because of a late field goal, it pushes, and then I get my money back.
Yeah, I think you raise a lot of good points. I'm just gonna go with on one other point that I think is pretty out there as well. I'm gonna say it's tough to play at altitude, and Denver's had a month practicing at altitude. Tennessee has a month of light practices under their belt. Maybe they're not ready to play a full game at altitude. Denver plus 135 on the money line is where you can find me, Higgins. So a little bit of head to head on this one.
Yes, The altitude is always something to take into effect when there's a game in Denver, whether it be football, baseball, basketball, hockey. It's always something to take into effect because even those arenas, they're not pressurized, so you're going to be dealing with that same bit. But Drew Lock still has a lot to prove to me as a quarterback until I can back these Broncos in any fashion, to be honest. So, Tennessee, they were confident enough in Ryan Tannehill to give him an extension. Derrick Henry had a superb season last year, so that's where I'm going to be. But I understand your pick. The altitude is a good reasoning to bring up right there.
Yeah, altitude week one. No one's played a game yet. I think it's going to be a lot tougher than, say, week six when you've been playing a few games. Maybe you have your stamina built up a little bit more. You're used to contact, things of that nature. I just think the altitude's tough week one. But going back to Giants Pittsburgh, because that's the first game of the night. I will find myself on that one, Higgins. I know you're staying away. You're go Big Blue. Hopefully they come out on top. But Pittsburgh and the Giants, that just sounds like an under. It doesn't really matter what. I didn't even give out the number, but it just sounds like an under when those two teams get together. And
That's fair. That's
under
fair.
45 and a half. Roethlisberger didn't play very much last year, coming off arm or shoulder surgery. And Daniel Jones, a little bit of a fumbling problem a year ago. We'll have to prove that he's fixed that. I could see this one being, 21-17 and that under 45 coming through.
You are right. Daniel Jones does have to prove that he's done fumbling that football. He gained about 20 pounds from what I've heard. I saw a lot of that in his neck, which looks about two to
His
three.
thighs, Higgins.
I saw it in his neck. You see it in his thighs. Standing next to Saquon, anyone's thighs don't look big. But I wonder, did the muscles in his hands also increase? Because he has to hold onto that ball, just like you said. That fumbling was a real issue for the Giants last year.
I mean, I'm going to be honest. I think he was better than you or most Giants fans expected. And I think fumbling is something that you can improve upon at least. So I expect Daniel Jones to kind of take a little jump forward this year. But yeah, week one against Pittsburgh's defense, they were fantastic a season ago. I expect Pittsburgh with Ben Roethlisberger under center to be a little bit better. But week one, he's coming off arm surgery. Daniel Jones with the fumbling. Maybe a few drives get cut short. I could see this being an under 45 and a half, and at minus 105, that's good value for me, so that's what I'm taking.
I could see it being a running match between Saquon and James Connors. I think that's a good point. Let's jump into the MLB, though. You mentioned there was a no-no on Sunday.
Yeah, Alec Mills threw a no-no. We mentioned you twice, Alec Mills, so that's pretty good on an NFL Sunday. A pitcher for the Cubs gets two mentions on a Sunday where the Bears actually won, Higgins.
They played the Lions, and
He
the
picked
Lions should have won
what a
that game.
terrible weekend to pick to throw your no-no. The Chicago Bears win a game. Trubisky, a fourth quarter comeback. Where's he getting his talking points in Chicago? No one's
Hey,
talking about him.
you mentioned that Bears Lions game. That could have also been a money line
It
capper
definitely
because
could have.
the Lions had every opportunity to score the go-ahead touchdown, and DeAndre Swift just dropped the pass. He was wide open right next to the pylon. If he caught it, it was going to be a good touchdown. But it just bounced right off his hands. He turned his head away. He didn't quite look the ball in, it seemed.
Yeah, that was a brutal drop, and that was our Alex Mills segment. Thank you.
Some IL movement. We have JT Realmuto. He underwent an MRI on his hip on Monday, so he's out for a bit. Lance McCullers, I just dropped him for my fantasy team. Or Lance McCullers, I did not drop him for my fantasy team when he was on the IR. He is going to be making his return on Wednesday. Sonny Gray is heading to the IL, though, for the Reds. And then Nolan Arenado on that hot corner. It's a bit uncertain, though, with his shoulder.
Yeah, those are some big names. McCullers returning is big. We'll have to see what happens with Rio Muto and his MRI on Monday. Sonny Gray, obviously been a good pitcher for the Reds, and It's going to be a big loss for any fantasy lineup not to have Nolan Arenado's bat in there, especially with, like we mentioned, playing in the altitude in Colorado. That's a huge help to all those bats. So, those are important things to note this week for anyone playing fantasy baseball.
Especially as we're heading down the pipeline, as seasons are finishing and people are heading into their playoffs in most cases this week if they haven't already. We surprisingly, out of the 10 games that are happening on Monday, though, Brett, only have two that lines were ready for on Sunday night when we came out with this podcast: the Braves versus Orioles and the Twins versus the White Sox. I'm going to be on the Twins versus White Sox game. The Braves versus Orioles, I mean, that looked good. I was tempted by the run line at -1.5 at -110. The value there intrigued me a little bit, but I'm staying away from that one overall.
Yeah, I'm not touching that one. A game I'm interested in, but we didn't have a line for. We mentioned Real Muto's getting an MRI. Phillies have Vince Velasquez on the mound. He's got a north of 5 ERA. I
Close
might
to
be look.
6.
Yeah, I might be looking to bet the Marlins on the money line tomorrow, depending where that number comes out. So, just something to keep an eye on there. But let's
Well,
hop
wait,
into
but
this
but
twin.
wait. Let's just
Ooh,
talk about that Marlins team real quick. Pablo Lopez, who's facing off against Vince Velasquez, his ERA is 4.5, and he's 3-4. And the Marlins at home are 6-11 this season. So I don't know if that's the game you should be talking about.
yeah, look at the Phillies IL and tell me who's playing all nine positions, and then we can have a conversation.
Fair point. Fair point.
I know they got Harper out there still, but that's about it. That's about
He
all
can
their
play 9
money.
spots, can't he?
He can play all nine positions, sure.
Let's talk about this Twins White Sox game though, because it is the first of a 4-game series. It's going to be the last time that these two teams face off in the regular season. Currently, the White Sox hold a 1-game lead over the Twins atop the AL Central. Minnesota is 4-2 against the White Sox so far, so there's a lot to look at with this matchup, a lot in play in terms of postseason implications as well. I'm riding the hot hand in this matchup, though. I'm going Minnesota -125, and it's also because of just who they have played recently. I mean, Minnesota's coming off a 2-game winning streak where they beat the Indians twice, and the White Sox, I mean, they've beaten Detroit and Pittsburgh recently. So just who they've had to play, the quality competition is much higher for the Minnesota Twins.
Yeah, I think those are all good points. I like that both of these teams can put up runs, and the over under of 9 looks a little low to me. And I think that's how I'm going to play this one, Higgins. I don't need to root for any team, I can just root for all the runs.
And yes, actually, I do want to make a clarification. I said the Twins had a 2-game winning streak. They actually swept the Cleveland Indians, getting a win on Sunday. And the White Sox, they have a 4-game winning streak after they swept Detroit. So they have 1 win against Pittsburgh and 3 against Detroit in back-to-back series. But again, Cleveland's a much higher quality opponent, so I'm still riding with Minnesota at -125.
Yeah,
But I agree that
and
over-under seems low.
it just seems low for these two teams. I mean, Nelson Cruz leading the league in home runs with 16 for your Twins.
And you look at who's on the mound, and neither's overly impressing. I mean, Barrios has a 4.40 ERA, and Cease has a 3.33. So easily could turn into a hitter's matchup compared to a pitcher's duel.
Yeah, and we'll see how those bullpens hold up too. Romo was suspended for a game for Minnesota, so uh, just all things that will come into play here.
Some other Monday games. I mean, we've had these doubleheaders going on, the 7-inning doubleheaders, which are interesting, and you got to watch out for those with the over-unders. I've hit one of those without realizing that it was only a 7-inning one, but they look deceptively low for a reason. The Mariners and the A's, they're playing a doubleheader on Monday, and then the Padres are hosting the Dodgers, excuse me, as Lamet and Kershaw go off against each other.
Yeah, now I am concerned that that over under I'm playing is a 7 inning game, and I'm double checking it because of what you just said.
I don't believe that the Minnesota game is a
I
doubleheader
don't
this
think
time.
so
It's not. It's
either.
not.
But
It's
but
not.
the way you phrased that, I was like, holy shit, that is kind of low. There's no way it's a doubleheader. I checked. Yeah.
It's not a doubleheader. That's a 8:10 Eastern time first
Yeah.
pitch. So you don't have to worry about that. That's a full 9 inning game.
Yeah, why do we think it's 9? All right, yeah, whatever. I'm definitely excited for this Dodgers Padres game tomorrow, or Monday night, Higgins. Kershaw versus the Padres lineup versus Slam Diego. That's going to be a lot of fun. And the Mariners A's doubleheader. The Mariners kind of fighting for a wild card spot right now. And I like these Mariners, Higgins. I've been on them a few times on this podcast. I like the young bat Kyle Lewis playing outfield for them. Go Mariners. They're a lot of fun to root for, and you kind of get some good value on them. No one's really betting on Seattle baseball teams here on the East Coast.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where those lines come out for sure. Before we head out of here, Brett, let's head into the Levy lock and the pick of the pod. And you know what? I can't remember if mine hit or lost last week, so I'm gonna let you go first.
All right, fair enough. We just talked about my Levy lock. It's going to be that Minnesota Chicago game on the diamond. And again, I think that over 9 is just a lower number than I would expect. Both of these teams can put up runs, lots of power in these lineups. I mentioned Nelson Cruz leading the league in home runs for Minnesota. Obviously, Chicago has tons of power in their lineup, most notably Eloy Jimenez. So I like that over 9 to on Monday, Higgins.
And I am going with the Titans -3. Now, this is a bet that you and I are kind of heading off against, Brett, because you have the Denver Broncos money line. But I'm riding the rushing leader from last year with Derrick Henry and the Titans. Denver is without Von Miller on their defense, so that is going to be interesting to see. And I think that the Titans' offense is just a lot more proven with bringing back these pieces compared to the young Drew Lock, who still has a lot to prove at quarterback for Denver. So Titans -3 and the over 9 in the Minnesota Twins versus Chicago White Sox games. Those are the Levy Lock and the pick of the pods. Make sure to follow us on social media at NBB Pod on Twitter, at Next Best Bet on Instagram, and the Next Best Bet Facebook page to make sure you get any other picks that we give out before our next episode drops on Thursday. This has been episode 76 of the Next Best Bet. For Brett, I'm Jake. We'll talk to you again after the weekend.